Hello, hello, hello. Today we have a repeat podcast from 2 years ago, actually almost to the date, where I interviewed Wade and Dustin Vugteveen, owners of DeHamer Landscaping in Grandville, Michigan. This, I've been told, was one of our better podcasts from people that know the Vugteveen's and the company, and really quite a bit of lessons here. All the personal reasons to have and drive a business, and all the big risks they've taken along the way. We've titled this "Taking Big Risks" with Dustin and Wade Vugteveen, and I'm thinking about this podcast, and I want to replay it here because now is also the time when we're putting together new peer groups and opening up our application process. And so for those that have thought about joining one of our high impact peer groups, then please take a look at the link in the show notes or go to jeffreyscott.biz and you can make the application directly. And you're going to learn by joining one of our masterminds how much support you can get while taking your big risks that you want to take in driving the growth of your business. And with that, let's jump right into the intro I recorded 2 years ago. It's about 3.5 minutes, and it'll give you the full scale of this podcast. And I think you're going to hear that there's a lot of value for you. Let me know what you think. Welcome to the Ultimate Landscape CEO podcast. My guests today are two brothers, Wade and Dustin Vugteveen. You'll hear Wade speak first. He's the younger brother. Dustin's a little bit quieter. He'll speak less often. This is a 52-year-old business, and Dustin and Wade have owned it for 17 years. It's going to do $10 million in revenue this year. They have between 60 and 120 employees. It fluctuates throughout the year. They have one location outside of Grand Rapids, Michigan. What I have here is 25% snow, 10% lawn maintenance, 15% irrigation, and 50% landscape install. They're going to mention some numbers which might be a little bit more up to date. The two brothers are 50-50 partners. You're going to hear how they got started buying this retail center and the series of hard choices they had to make along the way. You'll really hear how hard it is on them, on their families, their spouses, on each other's families, on the larger family, and just really on themselves carrying this risk and starting up this business. I think this was their third business together or second business together. You'll hear that at the beginning. It's kind of interesting, the first couple businesses they had. And so you'll hear about these risks, and really throughout this podcast, a series of risks they took when they got kicked out of their first property and had to buy their first property, when they finally hired their first key employee to replace themselves and hiring somebody more than they thought they could afford initially, and how they did that over and over again. And then how they made their first foray into snow. Not so much we're going to talk about snow, but really the risks of buying the equipment and making the jump, and then really expanding aggressively and always having to really equip their crews and the risks that entailed. And then, of course, when they hired their first consultant, which was not in their budget either. So the series of risks and how it's paid off, but they're always living on that edge of risk. And you'll hear that in what they share with you, and even in Wade's voice a bit towards the end, that it's very personal for them. And despite this, or not despite, but together with this aggressive growth, you'll hear how they are a people-first company. And we really dive into that, what it means to them, how their mission is really a calling. And it's very pure and true to their hearts, how they think about their employees' budgets more than their own budget. Very instructive on what it means to live and lead by a people-first mission. A lot of great insights that you will enjoy. This podcast goes on. We really could have talked on forever. They share quite a bit of their challenges. And so here we go. Dustin and Wade, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
I'm excited to have you guys on here. It's always interesting when we have, more than one guest. So we'll see how this goes. Why don't you introduce yourselves and the company to the audience?
So I'm Wade Vugteveen. Our company's DeHamer Landscaping. We're in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
I am Dustin Vugteveen. Yeah, the company is DeHamer Landscaping.
How many employees?
Yeah, so we fluctuate up in Michigan. We're a kind of a seasonal business, so we'll go to about 110 employees in the middle of the summer. We'll drop to about 60, kind of in the between the fall and then early spring. It goes to about 60, and then in the winter back up to during a snowplow event up to 110, 120, maybe a little bit more this year. So,
gotcha. And so, which of you is the older brother?
I am the older brother.
Okay.
By about 3.5 years.
This changes everything. Now I know who the boss is. That's a joke, guys. You can laugh.
We'll try to keep him quiet on this call. He likes to take over a lot. So
yeah. Excellent. So tell us how you guys got started. Who started the business? How did it all begin?
Yeah, it's a long story. We'll make it as short as possible. My in-laws had started the business about 53 years ago. And Dustin and I purchased it 17 years ago now. Really strange transition, how that went. Really long story, but the long and the short of it is that, I had never seen the business. Dustin had never seen the business. I always say I didn't know the difference between a maple tree and an oak tree at the time. And we were sitting down planning our wedding, and my father-in-law said he was going to sell his business. Dustin and I were both in some unique just transitions in our life. And so I was like, I'll buy it. And we sat down the next morning at breakfast, scratched some things on a napkin, and we bought the business about 2 months later. So.
Okay. And did you always know you'd be partners?
Yeah, we kind of always wanted to be partners. We did some different business ideas. Nothing really took off. They probably weren't real business ideas. We wanted to start a wakeboarding school, and we wanted to start it was all just stuff designed around what we wanted to do, obviously, right? And then when this came up, I called Dustin that Friday night, and I said, hey, I think I got a business for us. And my recollection was he said, I'm in, before I told him what it was. So he might remember it different.
We didn't really have any idea what we were doing. We were 23 and 26 years old. So for us to really be talking about a business, we had no idea what that even meant. So
how old were you?
It was about that. I may have been 22 or so. I was actually had just taken a break from school, from college, to figure out some stuff in life. And yeah, Dustin, what were you doing at the time?
I think I just finished my baseball career, and I was actually working for my dad as a surveyor. And it was really perfect timing because it was kind of around the 08 crash, and my dad had been laying off a lot of full-time guys. And I think within a week before this came up, I kind of said to my dad, "Hey, Dad, lay me off because this is not going to be my full-time career. Don't take a full-time spot from somebody else that is depending on this." So within a week or so of me telling my dad that and taking the layoff, this kind of started.
I never heard about that wakeboarding school. I kind of like that idea.
Yeah, that would have been fun. The trying to get insurance for it was we met with an attorney and went through some of those things, and that didn't take off very well at all. We actually started to supplement our income when we started the landscaping. We ran a baseball school for, what do you think, Dustin, 5 years?
I think it was all 5 years. Yeah. Started out pretty slow and we actually ramped up to pretty full time by the time we ended it.
This is
we weren't making any money doing landscaping. So we'd do that all day. And then come 5 o'clock, parents would bring their kids in and we'd do baseball training until 10, 11 o'clock at night, just trying to pay rent and whatnot. Dustin had played professional baseball in the Diamondbacks organization. So he was the brains behind that whole operation. So he was kind of teaching me how to teach kids. And then we would do that all night. And man, some of those days were fun, but most of them were miserable. You know, you'd get to work at 6:30 in the morning and a lot of nights leave there at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night and still weren't bringing home a paycheck. You weren't making enough money to even bring any money home, but you were working 14, 15 hours a day.
Baseball school, huh? What age were the kids you were teaching?
Really anywhere between 8 and 18. So we had a lot of younger kids, 10 to 12, but we had some older high school guys and some college guys every now and then that would schedule lessons.
So does that influence how you run the landscape business? Do you look at it as one big baseball school?
I don't know. It influenced me not to try to figure out a way to not work until 11 o'clock at night. I can tell you that much.
So little did you know what landscaping was all about, or if you knew some, but not enough, huh? Yeah.
And we were just a garden center. So we would wait for people. We were renting space from my father-in-law. He owned all the land and he was running a wholesale yard there. So we had like a 5-acre nursery that looked like it was ours, but it was really all his inventory. So people would come into our garden center and then they could buy a tree from us or a shrub from us, and we would buy it from him after they bought it from us. So it was kind of it was an easy setup, we thought it was an easy setup, right? And that's why we were like, yeah, we'll try that. That seems to be really easy. But when we bought it, we had one part-time employee. I think we did. I don't know if we did $100,000 in sales that first year. Dustin and I actually we were splitting time there, where Dustin, we may have done this for a couple of years. We would go work for my dad, where I'd work 1 week at the garden center, and Dustin would be working for Dad surveying, and the next week we'd switch, and so it was a really slow start to our business.
What was the revenue? I guess you just told me 100,000 when you bought the business.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to tell. So he had a few different businesses all operating under that business, and so he just couldn't split up the number. I think he thought it was $100,000 the year before. I can't even venture a guess at what it was, but it was maybe half of that the year that we bought it. And so there was a name that had been around for 40 years, right? Which is tough to put a value on, but there wasn't much for recurring customers and whatnot.
So what'd you pay for that business? Do you remember?
Man, this is getting into a really long story. But it was, I think we originally paid $80,000 for it. And then we got into, it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. I got married in February. I got married on February 10. I think we closed on the business on February 20, and realized that it wasn't what we thought. And again, no fault of anybody, but it just wasn't what we thought. And so
we didn't realize that until about 2 years later.
Yeah,
we were running the business for quite a while before we really realized that we hadn't really bought much.
Yeah.
So it took us a little while, but yeah, we were into it before we.
You didn't buy much, but you didn't pay much.
Yeah, we paid $80,000, and we ended up actually, to be honest with you, went back to my father-in-law and said, I haven't taken a paycheck in a year and a half, and we can't do this. This doesn't make any sense. So I think at that point we owed him like $40,000 still on it, and we said, you can either have it back and we're going to go like do something different, or this is all we're paying you, and we'll keep paying you rent, and we'll try to make this work. But yeah, we weren't making any money, so we were kind of in a tough spot, and yeah, that was really tough on all those relationships, on my marriage, on Dustin's marriage. Like, it was just I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. It was an absolute nightmare for probably 4 or 5 years. So we finally came to a point where our wives and us kind of just said, listen, guys, it's fun that you guys get to go hang out with each other and, watch Netflix in your office all day long, right? But our wives are both working full time, trying to pay the bills. And 4 years in, I think we're making less than $10,000 in a salary. And we've been doing this for 4 years. And finally, we just wrote out a contract between each other. And we said, either we're making, I don't know, maybe Dustin knows the number, 50 grand or something, right? Like, we're going to put ourselves on payroll.
It was 32. All
right. We shot high. We said, if we don't make $32,000, then we're going, we're hanging it up. I think that was probably year 5. And I still remember a Saturday. We did most of our business on Saturdays. It was a retail garden center. I remember a Saturday that was supposed to be our biggest day of the year, and it felt like nobody came in. We did $1,500 in sales, and I remember driving home just crying my eyes out, like, it's over. Well, I just wasted 5 years of my life, and Dustin's not going to listen to me, say we're going to start another business. Like, it's just over, right? And I'll never forget that day of just that empty feeling of like, man, we did all this work and we have absolutely nothing to show from it. And then somehow that year turned around and we probably made $33,000, or we made 31, and we told our wives we made 32 or something, but we kept going.
Okay. So you guys and me, a couple of years back, but take us through, you made 31,900 to when we met. How did you get from Garden Center to up to the point where we met?
Part of our contract when we first bought the business was that we weren't allowed to do any landscaping because the way that he had split it up. So for the first, 3 or 4 years, we were just selling plants. And I think a big turning point is when that kind of all dissolved. The other guy that bought the other part went out of business, and he had been gone for a while. And we decided that we were going to actually start doing some landscaping. So we were 5-6 years into the business, I guess. I had just built a new house with Jim Tibby Builders. And as part of the sale of my house, they were doing another model house that they asked if we would put a landscape on it. And that was the first actual landscape that we ever did, just a couple trees and bushes on the front of this house. And they found their own sprinkling guy and their own hydroseed guy or sod guy to finish the house. But that was really the start of our whole landscaping business. And we still have that relationship today. And we've really grown with that company. They're one of the biggest builders in Michigan today. I think that was probably the biggest reason that we started on this trend to where we are now.
And Dustin literally built so one of the owners built the first house the company ever did, and then his partner built the second house. And then kind of right in between those two houses, Dustin built the third house. I don't know how he got approved for a mortgage. I don't know how, we can't remember any of those things of how that happened, other than, in all honesty, God just laid that in our lap, and we were like, it was the cheapest way for him to get a house. Had no idea that was going to turn into the biggest builder in the state of Michigan, and that they've never used another landscaper since then, for 10 years. So we have a bunch of stories like that of just God just laying something out in our laps, and we look like we're, kind of smart for doing it now, but nobody had any idea that some of these customers would turn into what they did. So that was our first big break.
How many properties of this builder do you landscape now per year?
So we mostly just do new installs for them. They do a lot of single family homes and a lot of condo developments. As far as number, I don't quite know, but we've done over $1 million in revenue from them probably for the last 4 or 5 years pretty consistently, and probably ramping up closer to 2 million in a year like this year.
Yeah. And you're working for other builders.
Yes.
Correct.
Yep. Yes.
So
that relationship really taught us how to work for builders, and we've kind of repeated that with a few other key clients as well.
Yeah. So that lucky strike became the core of your business. And so how did you start doing the other things that you now do?
Man, even some of that, so we just started maintenance 4 or 5 years ago. And the maintenance came from that builder. We did a big condo project for them, and they wanted us to mow the lawns as they were coming, because we were doing this in phases, right? And they're like, hey, can you mow the lawn? And we said, no, we don't mow lawns. There's no money in mowing lawns. So they hired our competitor, and all of a sudden we're driving through there one day, and these guys are mowing in there. We're like, well, this isn't great, right? And then all of a sudden they're complaining about the way that we put the yards in, and whatever. And we're like, okay, this is going to be a disaster. And so we started our lawn service around that customer. At this point, we had 3-4 other large builders, right? But they were again the catalyst to start that division. They were, we started subcontracting irrigation and subcontracting hydroseed and all that different stuff, all for these landscapes that started off with that builder. And so everything kind of grew off of there. And I don't know if they're quite as big as they're quite as big as a percentage as Dustin just said, but they have been a kind of a catalyst for us to be able to, at the beginning, it was like they could pay the overhead on the work that they were doing, right? And then we could go and take some different risk with different opportunities, because we knew that they were going to be consistent for us. So.
Okay. And so what other divisions have you added since then?
So we do our construction landscape install. We do irrigation install, hydroseed, like I said. We do snowplow. We do lawn mowing, for all those services, mosquito spray and perimeter pests, all that different stuff. So that's kind of our mix of work. At this point, we're about 65% is the landscape install, including the irrigation. And then 25, I just did this yesterday, 20% snowplow, and 15% is our lawn care, somewhere around there. I think it's 12% and 22%, but that's kind of our mix of work now.
What's your favorite part of the business? Wait, Dustin, I want to hear your answer first.
That's really interesting that you asked that question. My favorite part of the business is install, and I think that's kind of got us to where we sit now. We're a lot better than we were 3 years ago, but our main income was always install or construction, and I think we learned pretty quickly in the last 3-4 years from the peer group that just to be more diversified. So snow is a really big part, and at this point, snow is probably my favorite, just because
he's on vacation half the time.
Yeah, it's not really a whole lot to do with me.
Okay, what about you, Wade?
We're falling in love with the lawn care and the snow, just because it's so much less work to sell it, and the recurring revenue, we're falling in love with that stuff. If I'm being honest, I don't understand the lawn care division as much as I do our construction division. And so we've made some big changes in that in the last couple of weeks. And so I'm diving into that a little bit more. And just, I'm loving it. I love our team on that side of the company. And yeah, we're falling in love with the recurring revenue.
You in the notes for preparation for this, you mentioned that you got kicked off your property at one point. When did that happen?
Yeah, that was probably 8 years ago. Yeah, so back to kind of how we got from $31,000 salary to meeting with Jeffrey. Yeah, one day in the middle of that, we're running this garden center, and my father-in-law saw a kind of a conflict, which made a ton of sense. He had wholesale customers coming in there trying to buy plants, and we have this big presence as a landscaper there, and so that's not a good look for his wholesale company. And so he came and said, "Hey, what do you guys think about finding a new property?" And we were like, "We're not making any money. We're like, I can't afford a property." So another moment where I'm like, I think I know I had just bought my first house. No, I was building my second house, and Dustin was a year into his house and whatnot. And I'm like, "Oh, this is great. We're going out of business. I'm going to lose my house," like all these different things. So we begged him to let us stay another year. He was gracious enough to let us stay another year to try to figure it out. And we went and toured this house that the developer had just bought. And it was on like 4 acres. It was kind of across the highway, and we were touring this house, and I don't know how we were this naive, but I look out the window. I'm like, "There's a nursery next door. Isn't that cool, right?" And there was a guy growing trees. He had 5 acres of trees that he was growing, and so we walked out of there and we walked next door and met the guy, and he was 75 years old. And so we were like, "Hey, there's no sense in us buying a house and trying to create a landscape company. You got a nursery here." And so it took us 6 months, but negotiated a deal with him and ended up buying his building and then put a big addition on it and all those different things. But that was another big change made us a lot more relevant, put more stress on the situation of, having to grow a little bit. But even at that point, 8 years ago, I think we were running maybe 2 landscape crews by that time, had 4 or 5 employees. Dustin and I were still out in the field almost every day. So yeah, from that point, we're probably doing $1 million in revenue at that point, 8-9 years ago. And back to like, how the heck are we going to pay the bills and bring home a paycheck and try to pay the mortgage? And just decided that we got to go for this thing, and we got to go harder at it. We got to increase the marketing and increase the intensity of everything. And that was kind of the start of saying, "Hey, let's be adults here and let's go run a real business." And started hiring people, started learning how to attract talent and that sort of thing. And we were growing 20% a year for those. I don't know if the math will work out here. It was 20 to 30% a year, from $1 million to, I think when we met you, we were doing 2.5, 3 million 3 years ago. And so we got to that point and we're like, okay, we got a business here, right? We're seeing that we can possibly be successful at this, but realizing the challenges of like, I can't do a whole lot more than what I'm doing right now. I don't have the knowledge to do more. I don't have the time. Like, what the heck do we do? We actually had a year there where I think it was like 2.9 million to 3.4 million, and just feeling like that wasn't enough. And so I don't know how we got connected with you, but that was kind of another kind of breaking point of I don't want to do this like this. It's too stressful. I'm working too many hours. There's got to be a better way. And if there's not, then I want out of this thing. So that was when we called you. I remember, I think I asked you like, "Hey, what am I supposed to do? I need help." and there's zero chance I can afford the help that I need. And so, like, what do I do? It doesn't make sense to hire you, and it doesn't make sense to not hire you, right? And we've had a lot of spots like that where you're like, just had to make a decision that if I want my life to look differently, I'm going to have to invest differently and make different decisions and trust that the results will come from it.
Yeah. You can't really budget for these big jumps you need to make in your business.
Correct.
That's really a lesson that I know, but it's like evident in your storyline.
Yeah, there's probably 10 times in our storyline where we feel like we had to make a decision like that, where we literally look at each other and be like, we can't afford to do this, and we can't afford not to do this. And so what do we do?
This should be an article. Maybe it will be my next article. You really can't budget for success, for scaling success that you guys have achieved. It's all these risks.
Yeah, not at the rate. I mean, you can do it slowly, I think, right? But if you want to do it in in kind of the high speed way that we've chosen for the last 3 years, the budgets are great, but it's tough to make them make a ton of sense because there's just other costs that come in to growth, especially at different stages. It's different, but.
Well, it's interesting because people will call me about the peer group and they're like, well, it's not in the budget. I'm like, it's not supposed to be in the budget. This is supposed to be a investment that makes you money, not an expense that you're pulling out of marketing to put into, coaching or a peer group. That's
very true. Yeah. Yeah. And it's something that's just, it's worth it. When you look, 5-10 years down the road, right? Like, would you invest X amount of dollars for your company to be 10 times bigger? Like, of course you would, right? But yeah, when you try to make it a line item, it doesn't make sense as a line item in the budget because it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Hey, quick question before we lose the thread of the real estate. So when you had to buy your own property, how much did your monthly nut go up, or did it go down?
It stayed about the same. We had a really this old man was very gracious, and he liked us and wanted to help, and he wanted some extra guys to hang out with, I think. So he was very gracious, put us on a really nice land contract, and we were probably rent went up $500 a month or something. So it wasn't the end of the world. And then, we were in some unique times back then when interest rates were crazy low. And, we ended up refinancing and took some cash out of it. And it ended up being a really good thing.
That's great. That's just a great case study of someone pushes you. You think, oh, I'm being pushed over the edge. And really you're being pushed up to take that next step.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that it wasn't like a lot of times you look back on this stuff and you're like, oh yeah, we bought a property, we got kicked out, we this, and it's like, man, those days were just, they were horrible. I remember that clear as day when he told us that we were getting kicked out, and I was like, I'm going to lose my house. How can you do this to me? And I didn't sleep for a week, and you're just like in this panic mode, like this is the worst thing I could ever go through. And you get through it and you're like, oh, that was actually the best thing that could have ever happened, right? And it seems like, 2 weeks ago I had the same thing, right? Like you're making this huge decision and you're like, this is the worst. This is the worst thing that's ever happened. I can't believe, and it just seems that's business, right? Like eventually if you're gonna go hard at things, I'm still learning, but I'm better at recognizing that it's hard. And there's going to feel like there's moments where you're like, I can't believe I'm in this spot. This is terrible. I'm never going to get out of this. This is too hard. What am I doing? I'm not qualified for this, all those different things. But we've learned together that, if you're committed to growing and going hard at things, like you better be committed to those really hard moments because they're never going to stop, right?
So some of those hard moments are easier to see the other side when the when we got kicked out of the lease, or when he walked in and said he wasn't renewing our lease, we couldn't see the other side. At this point, when you have some hard decisions, you know that there's something good possibly on the other side. At that point, it really seemed like the end.
Yeah. So do both you guys react the same way now, or is one of you like the stabler or more optimistic, or are you guys both sort of are your emotions and personalities similar, or do you take a different role when it comes to these risks that you take on?
I think we both really play both sides in different situations. We work on opposite ends of the office, so we only kind of make bigger decisions together. But our personalities are completely opposite. Wade likes to talk through everything, and I like to think about it a little bit. But I think that really balances us out. But there's never a consistent side that one of us is on and the other one's on the opposite side. So I think that's probably why it works so well.
So Wade's talking and you're just listening and thinking initially.
Yeah, most of the time listening.
Yeah. Right.
A lot of times thinking.
Yeah. That was a good, Jeffrey, you recommended the Winslow report. And then, what's her name, who kind of coached us through that. But on that note, she was a game changer for me, because she explained that to me. Like, my personality is that I like to externally process, and Dustin is the complete opposite. And so I would actually, I'd be thinking about things like, hey, should we hire Jeffrey Scott? Should we, I'll research for 20 hours and then I'll bring it to Dustin, who hasn't heard anything about this. And I would sit him down and be like, all right, we're going to do this, this, and this. What do you think? Yes or no? And he'd be like, having the complete opposite personality. I'd get so frustrated, like, dude, talk to me, like, say something. Let's figure this out. Right. And he would just be, his personality needs 24 hours to think about something, right? And then we can have a really good conversation. And she brought that to light of like, hey, if you're going to have a meeting with Dustin, send him an agenda 24 hours in advance and let him know what this is going to be about. And then you won't have that frustration. But sometimes learning those, and not that he'd be the first to tell you, I don't, not that I always do it, but I get less frustrated when I present him something. So learning your partner's personality is a huge deal. Now I don't think he doesn't care. I realize that he just processes things different than I do. Yeah. Which is good.
Interesting. It makes me want to ask some personal questions, but I'm going to sidestep all those.
I always tell the story. Back in the day, it used to be a lot worse. I think we're a little more calm now, just because there's a little more of a safety net, right? But I can remember days where I'd walk into Dustin's office and I'd be like, "We're screwed, man! Like this just happened, and like I think we're going to go out of business." And he'd be like, "Are you kidding me? We're doing great. We're having a great week, and I just sold this, and whatever." And we would even each other out, and then he'd come in a week later like the sky's falling, and I'd be like, no, we're doing awesome. And it almost became comical because we would balance each other out, and it never was on the same side. But it seemed to be when I needed somebody, he was there, and when he was down, I was up, and it was fun.
I guess by personal, what I meant was if we had your two spouses here, we could have a really interesting conversation.
Absolutely.
It would be interesting.
So you guys both take a lot of risks. You have that. You just have that in you. In fact, I don't think you feel comfortable unless you're taking big risks. So what other risks have we not discussed here that you've taken on? And then let's dive into that a bit. Do you guys see yourselves as big risk takers, or how do you see it?
Yeah, I guess I didn't.
I was going to say about the Winslow report. We've always taken big risks, but we never really realized how big of risk tolerance we had until we both scored a 1 or a 10 on the Winslow report. That was the only thing we matched up about was our risk tolerance. And it really makes sense the way that we've done business. And I think that's a big part of why we've been so successful. I don't know if you remember the Matt Damon crypto commercial where he's walking down this hallway and he says, fortune favors the brave. I feel like that's a really big part of our success, is just really going for some stuff that most people probably wouldn't have. And I think that's really allowed for our growth at this point.
So what's another risk that we haven't touched on here that you guys have gone after?
I mean, going full in with you was a risk when we couldn't afford that. And then I remember I came down and I signed up like the end of August, and you're like, actually, I got a peer group that you can come into. And it was meeting like a week later, and I hopped on the plane and we came down, and I'll never forget looking at Ed's numbers. We were a similar sized company in the summer, but he was running this great snowplow business and doing a couple million in snow. And at that point, we're doing like $300,000 in snow, and we're making a couple $100,000 a year, and he's making double that, right? And the only difference was the snow. And I called Dustin that night from the hotel room. I'm like, dude, this is nuts. This guy, he's a normal guy like you and I, and he's running a $2 million snow division, and what the heck are we doing, right? And so whatever it is in the next couple of months, we're like, all right, we're going to $2 million in snow in the next 18 months or whatever. And how are we going to do that? Well, we got to hire a salesperson. Well, we don't have any money to hire a salesperson, right? That doesn't fit in the budget. And then we're going to have to buy a bunch of equipment in order to plow that snow. And, we looked at, and this was just 3 years ago, right? But we looked at, hiring hiring that salesperson. I think we spent $1 million in equipment, took debt on all of it because we weren't making, much money. And we said, hey, we said we wanted to go be a player in the snow industry, and we have big goals for that, and we're just gonna go full force. And we took out more debt than last year's profit could pay, right? And then we took on another big salary, and just we looked at each other and we're like, we have to make a change. We can't lose money all winter, and it's going to take us a few years, and it's going to take us millions of dollars of investment, but this isn't working. And so let's go do something. And the bank's like, you're nuts. No, we're not going to loan you that kind of money. You can't afford it. Luckily or unlucky, John Deere was happy to sell us all that equipment, right? And this was coming out of COVID, where in Michigan we were shut down for 8 weeks, and during that 8 weeks, we were freaking out, right? Like, what the heck are we going to do? When are we going to open back up? But also, I gotta sell the snow, and we have to buy equipment, and coming out of that. In most areas, well, I think everywhere in the country, like, people start buying equipment, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're not going to have enough equipment. And so I don't even know if we're back out working at this point yet. And I signed a commitment to buy five big loaders for $1 million, right? And we looked at each other like, I probably had sat and looked at that contract, I don't know how many times, and I'd walk into Dustin's office like, you really want me to sign this, right? And he's like, yes, we talked about this yesterday. And then 2 hours later, like, okay, I'm actually going to sign this. Like, this is $1 million. We can't afford this unless our new sales guy goes out and quadruples the size of our snowplow division, right? And we just kept saying, hey, if this is what we want to do, we have to take these big risks, right? And that was one of our first big ones that paid off. And we did the same thing the next year. Went out and spent another $1 million when we couldn't afford it. Did more big contracts that we weren't not capable of doing, but we went for it hard. And at the same time, we were doing that in the landscape division, where just growing and starting more crews and just saying, hey, if we want to be this size, that means we got to go buy this many skid steers. We have to go buy this many trucks, this many trailers, and Dustin would say, go beg the bank and see if they'll give us any money because we want to grow.
And did they give you money?
They gave us money for a while. And then, then it was, the bank wouldn't give us money, but all the manufacturers would give us money buying their products. So, that's how we lived for a long time. That's how if I'm being honest, that's how we're living right now. Just growing as fast as we've grown and buying as much equipment as we have. Cash flow and getting things financed is one of our biggest challenges. But we're all in on it, right? Like there's no turning back at this point. Like we have debt, obviously. We have a lot of debt. We have it all personally guaranteed. We're in, right? Like there's no turning back, and we're fine with that. We're fine with that risk.
And so I have to just think about what the answer to this question is. Do you have the appetite for taking time to digest what you've bitten off and trying to chew? And how do you manage that, the sort of the plateaus that you kind of need to rest on in order to catch up and get more efficient at and build up your EBITDA? Do you guys have different approaches to that, or do you think about it, or does it just sort of happen?
The rest doesn't happen. Maybe it should, but we take very short times to rest. And part of that is, Jeffrey, when we started with you, we saw some things that we wanted to be different, right? Like you introduced us to this idea that we could bring in staff that could do a lot of our roles, and that we could really be owners of the company and not like the key employees of the company. And we saw a path that, hey, we could do that in like 10, 15 years from now, or we could do that in 2-3 years from now, right? And so and the way that our personalities work, we were like, you know what, 3 years sounds better than 15 years. And so we just started hiring staff, and we kind of built our office and our kind of overhead structure to be something that a company that Dustin and I would enjoy working at. And then we tried to create enough revenue to pay for that, if that makes any sense. And I think that most times people do the opposite, where they try to create enough, like get me another foreman, get me another, whatever, and I'm going to work until I can hire, it started with an office manager, and then, all the way to a CEO and, 15 people in our office. But we went from, and I'm not saying this is the right way, but this is how our growth has come so fast, is that we've said, we're going to go get great people in the leadership level, and then we're going to figure out how to pay for them. And so that hasn't given us a ton of time to kind of stop and say, hey, let's rethink this. We're getting a little more of that now. We're in a good structure now, but then you say, hey, we've built all of this. We have our team all across the board, but especially on our leadership level. I mean, just such great people that we're like, man, if we built all this, why rest here? This feels like the start of our careers rather than an ending point. So we're finally getting to a spot where all the hard work seems like it's led to today, and now let's put some fuel on the fire and really start growing.
It's interesting because I really had to push you for a while for you to bring in some financial skills, controller type skills.
Even the first thing you pushed me to was an office manager. We didn't have an office manager. I did everything. I paid every bill. I did everything. Nobody else was in the QuickBooks file besides me. And I remember at a peer group meeting, people kind of like laughing at me. And I was explaining how there's no one who could do it as good as I could. So like we could grow, but Wade's going to be the one controlling this whole thing. And you guys are just laughing at me. And we went out right after that. And I was like, this is outrageous. And Dustin thought it was outrageous. But I'm like, Jeffrey says we got to go hire an office manager. So we're going to do it. And we posted a job online. And it was crazy. We got 120 applicants in the first 48 hours for this job. And I was like, okay, so it's a popular thing, obviously. And we weeded through that, and we hired kind of our first kind of key person. Her name's Allison. Jeffrey's met her. She's an absolute rock star. And she was a catalyst to, like, I started giving her stuff and she was doing it better than I could do it. And which isn't surprising to some people that know me, but I thought I was doing stuff really well, right? And all of a sudden she comes in and she's doing stuff twice as fast and twice as well. And I had always understood delegating and, before to be like, yeah, someone's going to do it half as well as I'm going to do it. And I don't want to do that. And so she doing such a great job taught us that not only can we get out of the way of doing some of these things, but a lot of these things they're going to be done so much better. Because people are, I'm never I've never been the smartest person in a room. And so when we bring people in, not only are they smarter than us, but they're not distracted by all these different things, right? Like at that size company, at a $3 million company, the distractions are they're endless, right? And so you can't get stuff done. And so you teaching us to start bringing that stuff in, she was the catalyst to then just keep doing that. And it's been amazing to see what our team is able to do when Dustin and I got out of the way faster just in my role. I was able to get out of the way faster, but I'm just in awe of, getting out of the way and watching people do what they're good at, undistracted by all the other garbage going on. It's just huge. And I'd recommend everyone taking that advice and taking that leap and hire people when you can't afford them, because they'll build you something a lot better than you could ever dream of doing on your own.
I think the key is, you interviewed 120 people and you hired not the cheapest or even the middle. And I'm not asking what her salary is, but in terms of like skill level, you really brought in like the top of that huge pile of responses. And it's what I call, hiring the A+ person.
Yep.
Not only can they do today's job, but they're going to be able to do tomorrow's job.
Yep. Yeah, we hired the top. We hired the best person, and we paid a little more than what we were planning on paying. She was worth more than what we ended up paying her, right? But we've done that every time. Just hired the best person, regardless of what that cost, and hired people who were learners, and who were flexible and who wanted to grow. That was our big thing. We knew we were going to grow. Some people want to do that and some people don't. And so we started interviewing around that of if you come here, your job's going to be different in a year from now. And then it's going to be different again. And if you're up for that challenge, then we want you. But if you want a very direct job description and know exactly what you're going to do every day, and that's going to be the same for years, like we're not the spot for you. So we've got a lot of great people like that. And we've had some misses. You're not always right? I think that sometimes when you look at these kind of, not to call us a success story, but hopefully we can at some point call us a success story. But when you look at these stories, we gloss over all the misses, right? And you've watched us make some really good hires. We have A+ people, right? We also thought we hired some A+ people, right? And you'd have this temptation to be like, dang it, this person really set us back. And it makes you feel like, I don't want to do that again, right? Like that was too painful, or it cost too much to our customers, or, whatever. And I think we've had this unwavering commitment to, we're going to do it. We're going to grow. We're going to hire these people in. And when we miss, we go back and we give that person an opportunity to be successful somewhere else. And we just try it again until we get the right people in. And you don't hit a home run every time, right? But you gotta keep trying.
You guys have made hiring look easy, both at the executive level, leadership level, and even the foreman level, crew level. So what's going on here? Is it the town you live in? Is it that you guys are like doubly networked, so you have a huge network? Is it, hey, I belong to an awesome church and I'm pulling from there? Like, what's the secret sauce?
I think it's been a combination of a lot of things. It's funny that you mentioned the church, because for a while, up till 2 or 3 years ago, 50% of the people that were new hires were coming from our church. So we've had a few upper level people and some field staff come from our church. But I think the biggest thing has just been our culture that we've been able to produce through our awesome people. The burgers and beers thing that we started 2 or 3 years ago, where everybody just comes and hangs out and has fun with each other, has been a really big deal. I think the company parties that we have, where guys just get to hang out, and it's a really cool team. And I think that word kind of gets out. Most of the hires that we're having are family members or their friends, or their, have some type of relationship with somebody in our company. So the culture, I think, is probably the biggest reason that we've had such an easy time hiring at all levels.
Mm.
I mean, it's and Jeffrey, this. I mean, it's not, none of it's easy, right? Like it appears easy, but we hired a guy named Denny to be our integrator in the EOS model, or our CEO. And long story of how he came to our company, but he was a people first. We've always been a people first organization. We want to treat people really well. The reason why we want to grow is because we want to employ more people so we can have more influence in the world and just make better lives for people. But we weren't able to articulate that, right? Like our team kind of knew that, but outside of that, we weren't even doing a great job of telling our team that. And Denny had that same mindset, but he's a lot smarter than me. And he was able to articulate that on our social media, on our website, on our hiring policies, or procedures, right? Like we have a new lady, Rebecca, in the office, who does a phenomenal job of, when you answer the phone, when you apply for a job, she's calling you right away. And it is culture from the very beginning of that interview. And that stuff, word just gets out. I don't know how. You've seen it in other companies, right? Like, and you tell people to do this, and it's so scary. But if you actually care about people and you put them first every time, and you get rid of cancers, all the stuff that every good book says of how to build a good culture, it actually is true. But you have to do it, and you can't skip a single step. You can't treat most people really well, but put up with some cancers because they're your highest producers. You can't not pay top of market. You can't freak out when someone makes one mistake. All those different things, right? And if you do that, it won't change. It won't change in 6 months. It might not change in a year, but it will eventually. If you consistently do it, it'll eventually. I'm not saying we have a line out the door. We're still hiring, but if we weren't growing at, a crazy rate, we would have a line out the door. If anyone's qualified, they get a job, and then we buy more equipment and try to sell more work and whatnot. And so if it weren't for that, there'd be a long line out the door of just great people. But it has to start. It starts from your leadership team. Everyone has to be bought in that, and I usually give a big speech to our leadership team anytime that we're hiring someone into that level. Like, it's going to be all about people. You'll be hired and fired based on how you treat people. It's the only thing that matters to us. It's why we grow. It's why we come to work in the morning. It's all about people. It's about, providing sustainable, work for them. All our team stays on full time year round. Sometimes they're sweeping the floor and we're losing money hand over fist, but it doesn't work for them to, we think about that first. Like, hey, if I tell this person to go home and they get 20 hours this week, what does that mean for them? Not what does it mean for DeHamer's bottom line? What does that mean to that individual who has a wife and a kid and a mortgage? Yeah, I can send him home and I'll make $200 more today or $500, whatever it is, but that doesn't work for them. And if it doesn't work for them for long enough, they're going to leave, right? And if you go to them and have a conversation of, hey, what works for you? They go, man, I haven't been treated like that before. I'm going to go tell somebody else that my employer just said what's best for me in this situation. And good news spreads fast. And we're far from perfect. We're still trying to figure it out. But you just can't have anyone on the team that doesn't believe that, because it only takes one person, especially at a management level, especially in a leadership level. If there's anyone who doesn't actually believe that it's about the staff and the team first, it's a cancer. It's got to be removed.
Listen, it's easy to read a book on doing the right thing, and it's easy to hear about it, but I think it's hard to do what you just said, which is, to keep the employee on when you have nothing for them to do, to have those moments of truth conversation where you're just flipping it around to, hey, what's in your best interest? To do it consistently, pervasively, that's difficult.
It's incredibly difficult. I mean, it's the most difficult thing that we do. And I'll be honest, part of, I wouldn't do what we do, and I certainly wouldn't recommend, growing as fast as we have, going as hard as we go, taking the risks that we do, unless there's a bigger purpose for what you're doing. Simon Sinek is my absolute favorite, and he talks about starting with why. Why are you doing what you're doing? For Dustin and I, we're doing it to employ people so that we can have an influence in their life to make their life better, right? And so I'm not going to say that when there's those times where it's someone sweeping the floor. Like, I go in my office and I'm like looking at the budget, like I'm freaking out, right? And there's a lot of times where I have to leave in the winter because I'm like, I can't watch us lose this much money. But I'll drive down the road and I stop and I pray and I just go, God, this is what you've called us to do. This doesn't make any sense to me right now. Like, we're literally losing $10,000 today by employing people. This doesn't make any sense, right? And we have to go back to, why are we doing what we're doing? And it is all about making people's lives better. And so if that's what you're doing, then you don't get to make those decisions of, is this month's budget more important? Is DeHamer Landscaping, is us making budget more important than so-and-so, employee or team member? Is it more important that DeHamer makes their budget, or that team member can hit their budget? And frankly, the answer, it has to be that team member can make their budget, because we've been blessed beyond belief to be able to, we can miss budget a couple months, right? And the fact of the matter is that a lot of our team can't miss budget 2 months in a row. They just can't. And
that's a great way to put it. I think that's a great way to put it.
But that costs you money in the short run, right? It costs a lot of money in the short run.
Wade, I do think that, for the audience's sake, we should also say that you guys are very driven to numbers and performance and constant improvement and not putting up with mediocrity. So you guys aren't just two fun, fuzzy guys that only want to drink chocolate milk and give each other hugs or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, you can't just have that culture without having accountability.
Correct. And we try to explain to the team, so now the team, this is relatively new, but everyone knows their revenue every day. They know their goal. They know whether they hit it or whatever. But it's that consistently explaining why we're not talking about revenue so that more money goes into Wade and Dustin's pockets, which, don't get me wrong, we also not love money. We want to make more money. We want to be successful, all those different things. We're not immune to that. But it's explaining to the team that revenue and gross profit is what pays for your health insurance. It's what pays for your disability insurance. It pays for your 401k. It pays for all those things. It pays money putting into the company, pays for the sustainability of, if we do have a little downturn, that you'll be able to keep a job, or this winter, all those different things. And so it is constantly telling people that, yes, we're pushing revenue like crazy, and we're going to ask you to work a Saturday once in a while, and we're going to ask you to stay late and finish that job. But constantly explaining that it's not so that Dustin and I can make more money. It's so that this whole company can be more sustainable. And most of the team gets that, right? If you're around for long enough, they understand that those things are important, and that they're making the revenue mark for themselves.
Well, let me ask you a reality check question. So I think if somebody else hears what you just said, they're like, yeah. But what about the employee who's cynical? Tell me what happens. Either you don't hire them to begin with, you turn them around, or you end up pushing them back out quickly. Which of the three?
I don't feel like we have too many of them. Yeah, for one, we probably don't hire them in the first place, but ever since we've done this, I feel like everybody has been really positive about it. Everybody wants to know what they're doing on a daily basis. And the few people who really have complained about it in the last couple of months aren't here anymore. And I think, yeah, as long as you're hiring the right people, they want to get stuff done. They want to see what they've done, and then and we talked to them about it. It gives them a spot to possibly say, hey, am I worth more? What do I have to do to be worth more at this company as far as the financials go? So, yeah, we haven't had a whole lot of negative pushback as far as showing the numbers. And we talked about it for a long time. We've been discussing it for 4 years of, hey, what do we show them? How do we show them? And yeah, at the end of the day, we decided to show them at the most basic level and just show them the actual numbers of revenue. And it's gone really well.
Yeah. Yeah. I like how you talk to them about if they want to earn more, profit share more, get a newer truck, if you want us to add to the benefits or continue the benefits, that it's all in their control. And you're showing them the numbers on how they can steer those decisions, or steer making the money to make those decisions.
And we want everybody to kind of think of themselves as running their own little business. And we've done some financial training with the whole team just to really explain. I mean, the average person doesn't have any idea how a business works as far as what comes in and what goes out and what's left over. Like, explaining that and really showing some guys that has been a really big deal.
Getting that to our leadership team, and that's where I think the most important thing is those division leads, they believe in it. They believe that revenue matters because it's better for their team, right? And so we don't have a disconnect between Dustin and I. Don't sit on a podcast or sit in a restaurant and talk about these things and then go preach it to a bunch of people who don't believe in it, right? Our team is coming up with these things, right? And then I'm not forcing them to talk about revenue and talk about profit. They're leading this whole charge, right? Dustin and I are saying, hey, we went to Jeffrey, and Jeffrey had this idea. What do you guys think? How would this be good for our team? And this team is taking that. And so that's where those positions are so important that everybody, from the person who's doing the initial interview to the person who's managing, like if there's any issue in there where people aren't bought into growing this company and growing it in a way that's best for our people, that stuff it'll show up, right? And you can't have that. And the opposite's true. When you have that buy-in, when you have people who believe in what our calling is, man, you get people who they'll run through a brick wall for you, right? Or not for us, for the company, because they'll run through a brick wall for the vision, right? Of what this could be. And I heard people talk about it for years and years and years, and I thought it was a bunch of hocus pocus, right? I thought that people were really successful in business, and then they got to do some of these things. Once they made enough money, then they could start treating people well. And it's just not the case. You have to start with treating people really well, and then the money will come.
Well said. Two more things here before we go. I have to remember what they both were. I had them in my head here a second ago. Actually, three more things. So what's another risk you have on the horizon that you're thinking about? Since that's the theme here, or it's part of the theme of today's discussion, what's the next big thing you guys are thinking about?
I think probably the biggest thing that we're thinking about is just the diversification in our business. We've been so construction heavy that we have a lot of risk in that. If the economy in our area, which it hasn't yet, really turns around, we could lose a really big part of our business. So what we're trying to do that, and we talked about this before, is just increase our maintenance and increase our snow and increase our recurring revenue to try to mitigate that risk a little bit. So that's one big risk that I feel like we face. Yeah,
I'm always a fan of that. Wade, what's another big thing you guys are working on?
Yeah, I think in that, and this was part of the last month. And Jeffrey, you've been aware and helped us through this. I mean, we restructured that department from the lead, and we just made a commitment to. And that was a big risk. A very popular person in our company that we chose to go in a different direction because we wanted to build up that division so fast. And so that was a really big risk for us. And we'll see how it all plays out.
You mean making a change? Making
that change. Yep. And just saying that, and again, we've grown through, we have story after story of we're committed to the growth, and we run everything through that filter. So we will say, if we want lawn care to be a $5 million division in 4 years from now, what structure do we need? Who do we need as the leader? How many people are going to be on that team? And then we'll start making decisions for that right now, right? And I think in our past, and I think how a lot of businesses operate, is that you wait on those things, right? And I hope that eventually I can be this, and once I get to that size, then I'll act like a big company, right? And I've probably heard this from other books, but Jeffrey, I know that you had an impact on this too. Just act like you're bigger than you are, right? And since we started working with you the last 3 years, that's something that we do now, right? And we go, we're a $10 million company who we try to act like a $20 million company. We try to have overhead and structure in our office to take us to, I think our team right now, if we were going to stop growing at 20 million, our team right now in the office could handle 20 million we might outsource a couple little admin tasks, but we have a team that's capable of doing twice the revenue that we do. But those are risks. We make considerably less money this year than we would if we, chose to operate a $10 million office staff, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And we're committed to
office. You mean office and leadership?
Office leadership, yeah. And we hired 2 more office staff this week because we want to elevate those people. We are hiring they shouldn't even be called assistants, but the 2 new people that got hired this week that are assistants, so that people can work themselves out of jobs. We're always encouraging our leadership team to work yourself out of your job, and we will grow enough that you can we'll create another position for you. And we do that throughout the whole company. That's our growth. That's why we want to grow. We're trying to teach that to the team. Because if we're not growing, then we're not creating more opportunities for people. And whether that's Allison, who was hired as an office manager, to now runs our whole construction department. I can't tell you how much more money she makes, twice as much money as she was hired into, right? And those are just awesome examples that get Dustin, as Dustin and I were preparing for this. One of the things that Dustin said is an Allison who she just built a house on a lake with the builder that Dustin built our first house with, right? And Allison could have done that at her office manager salary. She couldn't have done like all those things, right? But it's our growth that allows for, whether that's Allison growing, being able to bring in a Denny, our new sales lead who kills it, to all the way down to one of our first employees 10 years ago, a guy named Jerry, who was 45 years old, maybe 50 years old when we hired him, has worked for us for 10 years and has busted his butt for 10 years. To now we've grown enough where Jerry can be a delivery driver and a yard guy, right? And so it's trying to preach to our team that this growth is so that Jerry and Manny and guys like this can have these jobs that they don't have to dig holes for the rest of their life. And lawn care operators can become account managers. And our goal is every time we hire someone, we don't ever want them to leave. And we want them to be able to, I want everyone to make 6 figures at DeHamer. I want that to be in everyone's career path. We want everyone to be able to own a house. We want everyone to have a family. We want to provide whatever we can so that whatever your dreams are, they can be fulfilled at DeHamer. And if that means that we have to turn into a $100 million company for everyone to fulfill their dreams, then Dustin and I we'll lead the way to 100 million if that's what we have to do. If that's what our team wants for their growth, then we'll just keep pushing. And frankly, that makes it a lot easier to get up in the morning than us trying to go make another 100,000 or $1 million, whatever the money is, like just isn't worth it. But watching Allison sign on a brand new, beautiful house on a lake, you're like, this is worth it. I'll get up tomorrow and I'll go do that again.
Yeah. That's a great story. And I want to end with that, but I just, one question in the middle here. So I forgot that I invited you down to a peer group meeting, a week after you signed up. Which one was that?
Which was it? I don't know.
Where was it?
It was at your house.
Okay, that was COVID. Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember. All right. Yeah. Actually, I have a photo of that. For
sure. Yep. And then Dustin came to the next one. We did the big crawfish boil, and I was just looking at pictures of that the other day in your backyard a year later after that. But yeah. But yeah, that's where our crazy growth started, right? So we went from, at that point, that fall, $2.7 million company to a $10 million company in 3 years. And like I said, that now we feel like we're ready to start growing now.
So you sort of maybe just answered it, but what's one of your favorite things or most valuable things about the coaching we do? And this is totally unscripted. You weren't prepared for this question.
Favorite things.
Well, I'm just saying, like, what's one valuable thing that you get out of it? And you kind of answered it, which is it's allowed you to speed up your growth, but that's sort of a result. Just wondering if you have a reflection on what we do together that is helpful for you?
Dustin, do you have an answer for you?
I was just going to say, for me, it's about the peer group. Just being able to compare numbers and knowing you're not doing it all by yourself. And, there's 20 other companies that are similar sizes that, we're a lot different, but there's a lot of comparisons that you can make. I feel like that, for me, gives me a lot of confidence of moving forward, and you're just not doing something on a whim. There's other people that are doing very similar things. So the peer group for me has been the biggest thing.
Having your outside perspective, and just you don't look at stuff emotionally, and you can walk me through decisions that, you help me solve my own problems, right? Ask the questions that I need to be asking myself, and don't allow us to make excuses for the decisions that we're making, right? And just hold us accountable to that. But then also, it means something when you have enough clients, you have enough experience in this industry that, when you say I'm doing something wrong, I take it to heart. But it's crazy encouraging when we have coaching and you're like, hey, you're doing this really well. Keep going with that. Like, it just inspires us to be like, let's go harder at this. Jeffrey thinks we're doing well. Like, let's go do it twice as hard, right? And so it's good to have that accountability, but also that recognition when you're doing stuff okay.
Well, let's end with one area where I think you guys are really killing it. So your mission-based approach, your purpose-based approach, what you called a calling, you said that like 5 minutes ago. That's hard to do in this industry because, we're mowing lawns, we're planting trees, right? We're laying bricks. It's hard for an average company to have a unique mission or a compelling mission, either way, right? Certainly it's hard to be unique. It's definitely hard to be compelling. And I think you become unique when you are compelling. And so I really have to hand it to you guys that you live and breathe this calling, this unique purpose, the why for your business. And as you said, it helps you get out of bed every morning. That takes time and effort to fine tune and hone. And, I think you sort of hinted at that you didn't have that initially, or you didn't even believe it. Maybe you kind of had it, but didn't believe it. It didn't seem like it seemed backwards. But you really have come into your own, both you guys, in terms of, I want to say, believing what's always been inside of you and then leading with that.
I think what you just said, leading with it, that's what I was going to say right before you said that. We always had it inside. It was always the goal. It was always about people. I think for the longest time, we believed that once we were successful, then we would make it actually about people. Then we would lead with that, right? But we didn't dare to lead with that until we were successful. And I think finally through our team coming together and like us being able to get out of the way and watch our team just roll, our team has come in and been like encouraged us to lead with that, right? And we would kind of tell that on the outside, right? Like when you got into these like personal conversations, we would explain why we're trying to do what we do, why we're in business, all those different things. And all of a sudden they're like, hang on, why are we not telling this to all of our employees? Like, I don't think that person knows that you lose sleep over, how much money they make. I don't think that they know that you care that they own a house or all the like, they don't realize that. And we were kind of like, well, I don't know. They don't care. They're just here for a paycheck. Right. And as we brought this amazing team in, they've just taught us to say, hey, let's be more vocal about it. Let's put it on everything that we do. And that's been huge. And I say it like, we've talked a couple of times about it. It's easy to hire, or it's this, or it's this. And I hate when people get on a podcast and say, we've been successful, and it's not that it's easy, but there's these little bumps in the road. Like, there's not little bumps in the road. There's these huge, huge disastrous things that happen that, Dustin and I have both got into journaling now, right? Where when these horrible things are going on, I mean, they seem like life-ending things, right? And it's incredibly hard to lead a people-first organization. It's hard to run any organization, any business, anywhere, right? But it's incredibly hard. And I got up this morning really excited about coming to work. This summer, I had a mental breakdown on the side of the road where I just couldn't handle it anymore, right? And so this is not easy, right? Whether you're growing at 10% or you're growing at 80%, it's incredibly hard. And even if you feel like you have a calling on your life and you know exactly what you're supposed to do, I'm clear as day about my calling on my life and that God created us to create jobs. It's so clear to both of us. It's crazy. It doesn't mean that we don't make incredibly hard decisions, that we don't second guess ourselves, that we don't get stressed out to the point of not sleeping, all those different things. It's incredibly, incredibly hard. I just have to remind myself, and I love that I get to do business with my brother. I love our team, especially at Denny, who's so bought into what we're doing, who, when I'm having those days, they put your arm around it, like, it matters what we're doing. So keep doing it. Because it matters. And I used to think that we're a landscape company, and so we can't do this we can't inspire people or just mowing lawns, whatever. We flipped that script and said, listen, you're 25 years old. You don't want to come work in an office and do like cold call and trying to sell something or whatever it is. Like, you get to mow lawns until you're 35 years old. Right? Or you get to plant landscapes. You get to do this beautiful work, put patios in, do all this crazy, awesome work. And then during that time, we're going to teach you leadership skills that's going to allow you to teach someone else how to do that. So when you're 40 years old or 45 years old, if you want to have a sales job or an account management job or whatever, we'll teach you the skills along the way so that when your body doesn't allow you to do the job anymore, we will create a different job for you. But I don't know. If you ask me if I could do anything today, I'd probably go put a landscape in, right? Like, the reason why we don't do these things is because our bodies can't handle it. It's not sustainable for us to do that.
Dustin just sold one, and it's ready to start next week, so he's going to put you on.
Sold two. I've been talking.
Yeah, probably. Is that what you've been doing, looking down? Hey, I think we should end. I mean, this is great, and we've gone longer than typical. I think it's important not to get lost in your story. So what a great story you're part of, like, you're playing a role in this great thing, but you got to take care of yourself. And I remember we had some serious conversations, Wade, about your own personal health and training regimen and taking care of yourself first, or not forgetting to take care of yourself every day. So that you can do this bigger calling. And, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but how are you doing at that, taking care of yourself?
Yeah, a lot better. This spring it wasn't good. I was stressed out of my mind. Wasn't taking care of myself. Gotten away from, again, I think God's called us to do what we're doing. I'd gotten away from putting him first and putting that first. Had gotten away from the exercise that I knew I had to do every day. Had gotten away from taking time for myself to be healthy. And it literally, it ended. I was on vacation with my wife and I woke up one morning and I had another contract to sign to buy another skid steer to grow more. And I laid in bed and I'm like, I can't sign this contract because I can't afford it. And I can't afford not to do it. And I said, we need to go on a walk. We go on a walk for like 5 miles. And finally, I literally broke down on the side of the road, just crying my eyes out on the sidewalk in a public place, like just something I would never do. And it was like my breaking point to just be like, I need to be healthier than this, or I'm not gonna lead anybody, right? If I can't lead myself and I can't have a sustainable life, then all this is going to fall apart, right? And so someone I follow like crazy is Craig Groeschel. And two things, he's got a book called Winning the War in Your Mind. And it is a life changer for my wife and I, of just controlling your thoughts, and just speaking truth to yourself. Just a wonderful book and great podcast that he does, but he ends almost all of his podcasts he says, everyone wins when the leader gets better. And I've just really taken that to heart, right? Like if I'm not there at 6 a.m, but I'm doing a workout and I'm listening to a podcast and I'm maybe reading some scripture, that's okay. That's a win for my team. If I'm getting healthier, and if that means taking a little more time off, if that means leaving the office when I can't handle the stress, if I'm getting healthier, everybody wins. When I become a better leader, our whole team wins, and they want that from me. And so as leaders, we have to, it's not put yourself first, because that's the opposite of what I believe, but to be a servant leader, you have to be healthy. It has to start there so that you can serve your team with your full energy. And Dustin does that a lot better than I do, a lot more consistent in that. But we got great people around us that I get to learn from.
Dustin's probably running a baseball camp on the side. That keeps him healthy.
So pay the bills.
Yeah, something's got to pay. Hey, listen, I really appreciate both you guys. I love working with you, and I appreciate your being so honest here today, sharing. Wade, you've really shared a lot. Dustin, you want to have the final couple words here? What do you want to leave us with?
I would say for everybody listening, I'm guessing a lot of our group, a lot of your future consultant customers are probably listening to this. I would say to them, if they hear one thing from this, is for one, hire A+ people. I think for us, that has been the biggest growth that we've had in revenue, for one, but also just for stress relief. When you know that there's somebody doing a job and doing it very well with the same mission, vision, values that we have, it's huge. And it's something that we didn't dare to do for a long time. And then after we hired Allison, that really taught us how, if you hire people that are A+ or better than you, or whatever the word is, it pays for itself 10 times over. And the other thing I would say is, being brave about decisions. I feel like we've been really brave, and it's bit us a few times. But for the most part, when we're brave, we always make sure that we know what the negative could be. And if the negative is breaking the business or breaking your soul or whatever it is, we don't do it. So taking risks, but taking risks that are calculated, that won't be devastating. So those would be the two things that I would leave with everybody.
Excellent. Hey, both of you, I know you guys are both busy. Glad to hear, Dustin, that you were making sales while we were on this podcast, though.
He wasn't.
But
he's built a team that's back in the office killing it.
I wasn't making the sales. I was just seeing the emails of the sales that came through. So
yeah. Well played, Dustin. Well played. Hey, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Really appreciate you.